Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, Maryland primary winners and losers. Hogan versus Jealous. Get ready to rumble. Montgomery County executive race of the Democratic primary, too close to call. And after all, what did term limits really accomplish? Finally, the Supreme Court of the United States is under scrutiny after announced retirement of Justice Anthony Kennedy. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the past president of Progressive Maryland, Elbridge James, Secretary of the Maryland Republican Central Committee, Mark Uncapher, Transportation and Railway Consultant, Phil Bell, and Education activist, Cynthia Rubenstein. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. There were several surprising results that occurred in the Maryland primary elections. Even before the results were in, both parties were getting the message out for the November general election. Elbridge, to some, the election of former NAACP leader Ben Jealous as the Democratic nominee for governor was a surprise. However, Mr. Jealous defeated his closest rival, and some would say the establishment candidate, Rushern Baker, by more than 10 points. So is Jealous's election a signal that Democratic regulars have fully embraced the progressive movement?
No, it's more a signal that our youth are stepping up and contributing to the electoral process. I think this is a perfect tide that's coming in terms of our youth, the Bernie faction, I agree with that, and more of the non-regulars saying we want a voice back into the process.
Well, Mr. Jealous, he basically kicked butt in that election. I mean, it wasn't even close.
He spoke to the words that our younger voters wanted to hear, and some of the Democrats who are tired of the same old thing. And that's what's really good about this election.
Okay. Well, Cynthia.
Well, Rushern Baker was hampered by a couple of other factors. Number one, some of the business money that he may have received didn't get because business owners and business interests are kind of on the fence between Hogan and any Democrat. Number two, Ben Jealous had lots of out-of-state money and national unions supporting his candidacy. So he had much more money.
All right, so Mark, the New York Times analogized that the election of Jealous was like ascending the summit of K2, the second highest mountain in the world, and suggested that he now had to scale Mount Everest if he was going to defeat the incumbent Larry Hogan. Jealous, who, as Elbridge said, is an ally of Bernie Sanders, seems to be quite different than the current incumbent. What's the race going to look like?
Well, I think you set it up with your question, which is that he faces a real uphill contest in order to become governor. I think Governor Hogan continues to be the clear favorite in this race.
But, you know, there's something important here. Think about, the New York Times has said a national political figure winning in a blue state is like ascending K2, winning a primary in a blue state, and Mount Everest would be winning the governorship. So that says to me that they're recognizing the Democrat Party has fallen, that they are in trouble nationally and particularly here. Just using that analogy.
Well, I'll go to Cynthia on this. I mean, Cynthia, this is still a very blue state, and even with the popularity that Larry Hogan has, if there's a blue wave, Mr. Jealous could certainly get in.
He could certainly get in. He won the state outside of Prince George's County. He even won Montgomery County. And he will have to appeal to a big tent of Democrats, but he's already appealing to a big tent of Democrats. The factor in the fall is going to be those Democrats who like Hogan, but the scales could be tipped in that they will say, but no Republican as governor.
Mark, is that the problem? Is that the issue?
I certainly is a challenge, but I think the Maryland voters will look at the governorship, on its own merits and not on sort of the other issues. I think that this also helps unify. Ben Jealous's single-payer health insurance plan is going to be an albatross around him when you look at just how much it's going to cost folks.
And you can't forget the luck factor. Larry Hogan has been a very skillful but also a very lucky politician, and that may carry him to a second term. First time in many years for a Republican.
Okay.
I want to shift gears to local races, if that's okay. Phil, in the Maryland primary for county executive, the results have not been announced since the race between Mark Elbridge and David Blair is too close to call. Whatever the outcome, was the Washington Post the loser in this race since they wrote 2 editorials in support of businessman David Blair?
No, I don't think so, because the Washington Post has a tradition, especially when it comes to these local races, of taking some interesting positions. I've seen races in, state races in Virginia where they take the side of a Republican who has absolutely no chance of winning against a long-established Democrat who seems to more closely fit what it is that they, write in their paper. So it's just kind of the flight of fancy that they do. So it's not going to impact them at all.
They also lost out in their endorsement of Rusher and Baker. So they had sort of two check marks against them in the Democratic primary.
Well, I disagree with you. I think the endorsement of David Blair is the only reason Blair did so well. He was really an unknown entity. I mean, other than having given money, and there were several other qualified candidates. Rose Krasnow probably got hurt the most by that endorsement by the Washington Post.
Right. That's at that point the race shifted. And then it became a race between David Blair and Mark Elbridge. And then the air came out of the tires for other candidates in the race. And it came down to the last weeks of the election, pre-election, it was David Blair, Mark Elbridge, that's your choice.
But also, Berliner started running some very good, effective ads, and that took away people from Mark Elbridge and moved them towards Berliner. And so there are consequences to all actions in terms of who takes from whom.
But Roger
who
had
puts to
trouble
whom.
raising money, I think.
But at the last minute, he put some very effective ads out that had people saying, "Oh yeah, he could be a good and effective person." So it did draw away from Mark's.
Well, I want to ask Cynthia about kind of the elephant in the room, which was the term limits that we had after the last election, which forced so many vacant seats, but the reality is we still have 3 Democratic candidates from Silver Spring and Tacoma Park, and 1 from Kensington. So were term limits even effective?
Well, that's where the voters are from. We have a high concentration of what they call the Democratic Crescent, which is Silver Spring and Tacoma Park and that Kensington area and the areas of Glen Echo and et cetera. And so if there were more voters tuned in Damascus and Gaithersburg and Germantown and the upper reaches of Rockville and et cetera, then there would be more chance for people from other areas.
But it also speaks to candidates getting out. I mean, those that want to be politically active and savvy, getting out there and putting their name out there early. And so you have name recognition that does have some rewards and follow through.
And the winners in the at-large race had run before. Will Durando had run before. Evan Glass had run before. So people have to get themselves. So it was successful because some people who ran for the first time this time will have a chance in 2022.
Well, we got about a minute left. I want to go to Mark. But Mark, doesn't this support the theory that we should do away with the at-large seats? Because once again, the county council is dominated by the east side of the county.
Well, when you look at the percentage of votes because there were 32, I guess, the Democrats running in the primary at large, the number of votes with, I guess, Hans Riemer did appreciably do better, but the number of votes, I think the three other winners all had less than 10% of the vote, as I recall.
Yes.
It's a very, very fractured vote. I think it would be far better to have the single-member districts where you would have a better, clearer relationship with your member.
But the single-member districts I used to complain about the Board of Education, with in fact being elected throughout the whole county. And one of the benefits of it is that you have those that serve us have to know all parts of the county.
Yeah,
and
but
so
all those people at
benefit
Tacoma
of
Park know Damascus, and they know
they have to go up there.
Yeah, right. They don't get out beyond the Beltway. All right, we're going to go and look at the local races because we have we don't have time to examine all of them. So let's concentrate on just who were the biggest winners and losers. And Elbridge, I'm going to start with you. Who were the two biggest? Who was the biggest winner and who was the biggest loser in this election?
The biggest winner are our younger Americans and those individuals who are entering politics for the first time. You know, and that's both on the electoral side with regard to the candidates and also those of us that were trying to elect them. I think you had.
You're being way too nice.
No,
You were being. Come on. Who was the biggest loser?
biggest loser was the establishment, the Democratic establishment. They're the biggest losers.
Good. Thank you, Mark.
To agree with Elbridge, the biggest loser, to be very specific, was Mike Miller.
Correct.
Mike Miller lost to two of his top chairmen, Conway and Mac.
In Calvert County.
Mac Middleton,
Mac
yeah,
Middleton.
who was finance chairman, and the others, but health chairman. That really is going to be a blow to him and to that establishment Democrat. That I think sets up the biggest winner, which is Hogan, because by pulling out those centrist, more moderate Democrats who've been around for a while, a lot of people are going to take a look and say if they're prepared to make that change to go to Jealous.
But you look at the changing demographics in those regions. Okay, in Baltimore City, Hogan's not going to benefit from that because those who are going to replace them, they're still going to vote Democrat, and they'll be. The benefit he may have is in the legislature where you have new committee chairs. But if I know Mike Miller, he'll find a way to retain his power and his control.
I need to go to Phil because we've got to wrap up this segment.
I'll say the biggest winner is Larry Hogan because nothing that happened at any level from the Democrat side really showed a power of anything that's going to be revolutionary to disrupt him. But the biggest loser is the Democratic establishment, not the way we've been talking about it, but just because Ben Jealous and the Bernie Sanders crew is not in the process of building a new establishment yet. So that could have far-reaching impacts beyond this election.
Cynthia.
Okay, biggest winner, the progressive union wave that brought that took out Rusher and Baker and brought in Ben Jealous for the nomination. Biggest losers in Montgomery County, women. There will be 8 men on the county council and 1 woman, and it'll be 4 years before we have a chance to correct that.
So maybe we should have individual districts, and you'd have a better opportunity of electing more women to the county council. Is that what I hear you saying, Cynthia?
You should wait for my parting shot.
No, she wants Ami Hober to run, and well, anyway, we'll.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see the Ami Homer. You mentioned the Ami Hober race. I think Ami Homer is an interesting character. I thought she ran a very good race the last time. I certainly hope that she has a chance against David Trone. David Trone's got more money than God, so he can dump as much money as he wants into that race. But it'll be interesting to watch. But I think the biggest loser, frankly, were Montgomery County voters. I mean, I know I've been harping on this single district issue before, and I'll harp on it until it's changed. But I really do think there's a disenfranchisement of the western part and the northern part of the county by having so many candidates come from Silver Spring and Tacoma Park. I just think it's wrong. It's not fair. It's not fair to everybody else. So that's who the biggest loser in my opinion is. And I know you don't agree. So when we come back from this short break, did Anthony Kennedy set the world on fire with his retirement announcement? Stay tuned. Welcome back. Early in the week, the Supreme Court of the United States issued several opinions that were highly controversial, including the support of President Trump's travel ban, a blow to labor unions banning the forced collection of union dues by non-members, and striking down a California mandate regarding religious freedom and mandatory abortion counseling by religious-run pregnancy centers. But none of these created the reaction that the announcement by Justice Anthony Kennedy had when he announced his retirement. It set the Twitter universe on fire. Cynthia, Justice Kennedy was appointed to the bench by President Ronald Reagan, so replacing him with another Republican appointee shouldn't be a big deal. I mean, it's not like it's a Democratic appointee being replaced, is it?
But this time, the appointee will be much more conservative than Kennedy.
How do we know that?
because of the way, because of the trends and the strategies that we're seeing in the paper by the anti-abortion and evangelicals. There are names up that are supported by Jeff Sessions and Mitch McConnell, and Donald Trump is primed to give evangelicals and anti-abortion constituencies what they want and what he's promised.
But they still have to pass the Senate, and the Senate isn't monolithic, and the Republicans.
And so in the Senate,
Republicans don't vote in lockstep,
right,
like the Democrats
and
do.
so we need to watch two senators in particular, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, because I think they will be two who could possibly vote against.
What about Democrats who might switch? You got Joe Manchin, you got Heidi Heidkamp,
And
who was
Donnelly
basically,
in Indiana, yes.
dared not to vote for.
Correct, and they are facing tough re-election bids, and the threat is that they're going to confirm someone before the election, and those three Democratic senators are in the hot seat. And then the counterpoint to that is watch Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski.
Phil, what impact will this have on November general elections?
Well, I'm not really sure what that's going to be, because on one hand, you have a lot of folks who are going to vote based on those members. That's going to be a little bit less than just, well, you voted for this Supreme Court justice, you didn't vote for that Supreme Court justice. There's a lot more going into these races beyond that. In fact, you could even look at Florida. Right now, Bill Nelson, who has been a long-term do-nothing senator, terrible job in all the years that he spent there, and I know because I'm from Florida, he finally has woken up and said, wait, I care about Puerto Rico, which is a state he doesn't represent, because there are Puerto Ricans there that he thinks might vote for Rick Scott if Rick Scott seems like he cares about them more. So there's going to be more to that than just this. But I think the question about this appointment is here. Would it make sense now for the left to stop thinking about the Supreme Court as a super legislature and start focusing on trying to win their ideas, win the battle of ideas, as opposed to getting things they don't like declared unconstitutional? That might be a more noteworthy outcome than anything electorally.
That's a harder pull. Elbridge.
The election in the fall, again, like the election in Maryland, is going to be the newcomers. It's going to be the teenagers that are coming into the ballot place who usually don't vote in a presidential election, let alone in an off-year election, who are going to be setting the tone. The mothers, the unemployed. I think this is the time we're going to see the disenfranchised start to step up. I think you're going to start seeing labor organizations and other organizations go toward the disadvantage.
Why do you think that? I mean, do you think it's just because it's Donald Trump they're going to come out and do this?
It is because they want to have some action done, and they don't believe that their representatives in the past, as several key Democratic legislators have already bit the dust in the primary, they're going to carry it on and continue it through. Healthcare is going to still be a big issue.
The contrary view from Mark, which is, Mark, the economy is going great. Unemployment of Latinos, blacks, women are at their lowest historical levels ever. So who are all the disenfranchised people that are so angry that are going to come out and vote?
Well, I think there's still a lot of anger out there, and I think that we have two competing approaches as to how to address that anger. I think Donald Trump represents a rejection of what had been the sort of free market, pro-business Republican Party, but also Bernie Sanders reflects a rejection of that third way Clinton approach to politics. So we're in a real transitional period in our politics, of which appealing to a disenfranchised electorate is really one of the keys. And we have, Elbridge and I have sort of two different visions as to how that should shake out.
Well, what I'm amazed at is what little influence the mainstream media is going to have on this election. I think people have totally tuned it out. They either have their opinions formed or not, and they don't believe. Either side doesn't believe the mainstream media as to what is putting out on as actual and factual news.
Social media is really going to carry the day. Social media is what's going to inform our new voters or those of us who don't trust the mainstream media.
Look at the New York Times. The New York Times got the got the race in the Bronx wrong.
Yes.
Totally
Big
wrong.
time.
But-
Did not see it coming.
But
Did not
why
see it
would
coming.
they? I think that's more of an Eric Cantor situation where nobody saw that coming either, and it's simply, here's a guy that didn't work.
Well, you're going to have the last word on that, Phil, because we've got to wrap it up and go to parting shots. Stay tuned for parting shots when we come back from the short break. Welcome back. Now I'm going to reveal something personal about myself, which will tell you just about what a boring personality I truly have, because I enjoy historical books about historical figures. And I'm in the middle of reading a book about Friends Divided, about the rivalry between and friendship of John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. What I find most compelling were the private reflections that each man had while composing our country's Declaration of Independence. Jefferson may have been the principal author, but Adams was definitely its editor. Next Wednesday, the nation will celebrate our nation's 242nd Independence Day. In the aftermath of our recent primary elections, I urge viewers to reflect and appreciate the liberties that we as Americans enjoy and the stability that our Constitution provides us. Now with parting shots, Elbridge James.
I'd like to give kudos to the Board of Election, their staff, and their senior leadership. They developed a program where voters and those who are working the polls could get the votes in, get them counted, and get them back to the Board of Election with great effectiveness and efficiency. Kudos to them.
Thank you, Elbridge. Mark Uncapher, your parting shot.
The price tag for Ben Jealous' single-payer health care plan is absolutely staggering. When Vermont was looking at this a number of years ago and then pulled back, it was pulled back because it basically would have doubled the state budget. All the taxes would have had to have been increased by 100%. Same thing would have happened when this was proposed out in California. I think both the Post, the Sun, and the other Democratic candidates did themselves a disservice by not more thoroughly discussing this issue in the primary and letting voters know just how expensive Ben Jealous' plans would have been.
Thank you, Mark. Phil Bell, your parting shot.
I want to congratulate a former panelist on this show, Liz Mattori. She is now the Republican nominee for the 2nd Congressional District in Maryland. She's black, female, former Democrat, and first-generation American, the sort of things that are going to make the left's head explode when she gets into Congress and beats Dutch Ruppersberger.
Thank you, Phil. I was so excited to see that Liz had won her primary. That was a wonderful, wonderful thing for us all. Now, Cynthia Rubenstein, your parting shot.
All right, to continue with the theme on women, I want to talk about 2022. When Nancy Navarro's term will be up, we need to elect another terrific woman to District 4. Hans Riemer will be out because he will have served 3 terms in the county council. We have an opportunity to elect a woman at large, and Craig Rice will have finished his 12 years of service, and we have an opportunity to elect a woman in District 3, and it is not too early to start. So men and women of Montgomery County, let's support some women in 2022 to restore some semblance of balance, gender balance on the county council.
Well, thank you, panel, for all those wonderful observations. I have one more observation as we approach Independence Day, and that's about baseball. Our national baseball team, the Washington Nationals, has certainly let me down. I go away to California for 2 weeks, and when I come back, they've lost 11 out of 13 games. I am in utter shock, and I am in disarray, because not only did I expect the Nationals to soundly defeat the Mets, who are a nothing team, but also the Phillies and the Braves, and be on top of the National League East, where they rightfully belong. And where are they? They're 4 or 5 games behind Philadelphia and behind the Braves. It's a terrible situation. There's nobody on the team hitting except an 18-year-old who just got called up from the minors. What a shocking, shocking chain of events. Now, we have 2 weeks before the All-Star game, and I'm expecting big things from the Nationals, because they can't just live on baseball games and rock concerts to fill that stadium. I know Cynthia's going to the stadium on Independence Day. It's going to be a great event, and she's going to stay for the good music thereafter. So everybody, enjoy the 4th of July, enjoy the fireworks, and once again, the Beach Boys, who are older than even Elbridge, are going to be playing on the mall on the 4th of July. Stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in. Tune in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.